Hello friends! Most of the population suffers from addictions and compulsive behaviors, which can be shopping, gambling, smoking, sex, the internet, overeating, even exercise, and more. Doctors offer medications and behavioral therapy. However, none of them can cure addictions. That's because nothing can change someone's personality and self-identity with medicine and therapists. Even I had suffered from addictions to nicotine and food. Because of my congenital heart disease, I knew those addictions shortens my life. That led me to a long journey to find the escape route to freedom from addictions. Today, we understand that addiction and compulsive behaviors resides somewhere in our minds. Yet, we become aware of it only when addiction and compulsive behavior affect our lives and we become chronically ill from it, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. We trust science, doctors, and medicine to heal diseases. However, addiction and behavior are not diseases. They are ways our personality tries to protect us by using our ego. Look, I see that therapists advise throwing away the ego. You may even think that ego destroys a relationship, right? But according to Freud personality theory, the mind has three parts and the ego is just one of them. You see, addiction and compulsive behavior are created when there is a conflict between our primitive instinct, the way we perceive reality, and our morals and values. For many of us, talking about psychology sounds complicated subject. That's why we rush to see a doctor and take drugs he offers, without regards to the side effect of them. Look, when we have a problem, it's easier to persuade us to believe in a solution, even if it doesn't work. It is just like many of us believe that the mRNA shots for corona are safe and effective when they are not. That's why I encourage you to continue watching this vital information, and I made it easy for the layman to understand. So let's start. Freud's personality theory suggests that the mind has three parts: the I, identification, or id, which has our primitive instincts; the ego, which is the way we perceive reality; and the superego, which contains our morals and values. Freud claims that the id is the primitive part of our brain. It controls our instinct and survival, to enjoy food and sex, to avoid pain and suffering, and to save energy. The id also stores our memories and life experiences. The ego is the realistic part of our mind. It mandates between the desire of our self-identification and our morality. The superego is the morals and values we acquired from our parents and society. The superego works to suppress the urges of the id and tries to make the ego behave morally rather than realistically. Now, each part of our personality contributes to our behavior. The id is the primitive and instinctive part of our personality. The id is impulsive and unconscious, which responds immediately to basic needs, urges, and desires. The personality of a newborn is all eat. If the infant is hungry or uncomfortable, they will cry until the demand of the eat is satisfied. Only later in the child's life does the ego and the superego develop. The id doesn't change throughout our lives because it is not affected by reality and logic. You see, the id operates in the subconscious mind. The id is always looking for pleasure and immediate satisfaction, regardless of the consequences of it. When the id achieves his demand, we feel pleasure, and when it is denied, we feel unpleasant, tension, stress, and anxiety. That's how we feel when hungry and food is not around, right? Now, the ego is the only part of the conscious personality. It is what we are aware of when we think of ourselves and what we are usually want people to think about us. The ego meditates between the unrealistic id and the real world. It is the decision-making part of our personality, and it needs a reason to get in action. On the other hand, the id is impulsive and unreasonable. Now, the ego is working out realistic ways to satisfy the id's demands. You know how it is when you are postponed satisfaction to avoid negative consequences of society. Just like the id, the ego seeks pleasure to reduce tension and to avoid pain. However, unlike the id, the ego is looking for a realistic strategy to obtain pleasure. Listen, the ego has no concept of right or wrong. All it wants to achieve is satisfaction without harming itself or the id. Yet, usually the ego is weaker than the id, which makes many of us achieve pleasure and satisfaction harmful to our health and well-being. That happens when the ego fails to achieve pleasure in a realistic way. That's when stress and anxiety takes over. To help overcome unpleasant feeling, the unconscious defense mechanism is employed. When that happens, the ego tries to find another realistic, rational plan. If it doesn't work, the ego will try to find a solution until it finds it. That enables the person to control the impulsive behavior and demonstrate self-control. Now, because the subconscious is much stronger than the conscious mind, it's easy to adopt addiction. That's why after quitting, many falls off the wagon time after time. Now listen, the superego is a part of the subconscious mind. It's the voice guiding you to do what's right, but it's also the source of self-criticism. It reflects society's morals and values and your ethics. The superego controls the id impulsive behavior, especially those which society forbidden, which are sex and aggression. The superego has two systems, the conscience and the ideal self. The conscience is our inner voice that tells us when we have done something wrong. The conscience can punish the ego by causing feeling of guilt. For example, If the ego gives in to the id's demand, the superego may make the person feel bad through guilt. That can be seen in the fact that 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. The ego wants to control the overeating behavior, but it gives in to the id's demand for quick pleasure and satisfaction. Afterwards, feeling guilty takes over and the person thinks he's unworthy, and that feelings contributes to stress and anxiety. That's very common because the urge and drives coming from the id clash with prohibitions coming from the superego. When the feeling of unworthy repeats, over time it is stored in the memory of the subconscious mind, and that person starts to believe he's unworthy. That can lead to self-punishment, self-destructive, and addictive behavior. I want you to remember that your belief overrides your desire. If you believe that life is not worth living without fattening food, nicotine, alcohol, and drugs, then even a strong desire to quit the addiction is going to fail. That's what happened to me time after time. When I quit the addiction to nicotine, I adopted addiction to fattening food. For years, I played yo-yo between those addictions. I have tried different quitting programs, but yet I still had relapses. And after every relapse, the same question came to my mind. Why did I fail? What I was doing wrong? And you know what? During my research, I realized that the Institute on Drug Abuse, which is heavily funded, is not looking for a practical solution to help those who are fighting addictions, but they are looking for a profitable drug or vaccine to control addictions. Let's listen to it.
And looking forward down the road, she sees a day when science might banish the curse of addiction.
A cure would be fantastic, and that means you get a medication like an antibiotic. I cure you.
Volkov's labs and others around the country are working to develop vaccines to block drugs from entering the brain. The complexities are enormous and progress is slow.
That's why when I found the escape route to freedom from addictions and I had freed myself and helped other people too, I realized that my research and the Escape from Addictions program I put together is perhaps the best contribution I can give to humanity. Below this video, I have a link for you to see the presentation on freedom from your addiction. Click on it now and start your freedom free of charge. Do it now and I will see you in the presentation. Goodbye.